So we started Cydan, a rare disease accelerator here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, back in 2013 with the concept that we could more efficiently identify new therapies that would be essentially modifying of the disease for patients living with rare diseases. And so over the last 4 years, with capital that we've raised from a variety of investors, including New Enterprise Associates, Pfizer Ventures, Alexandria Investments, originally Bay City Capital, now Longitude Investments, and the Lundbeck Fund, we've looked at over 1,000 ideas. We've dug deep on about 50 of these opportunities, and out of that we've created 3 companies. The first company, Vtesse, was focused on lysosomal storage disease, Niemann Pick type C, and we took that from a phase 1 program at the National Institutes of Health through to a phase 3 study, and ultimately it was sold to Sucampo, and they are continuing to develop that for patients with Niemann Pick C. Our second company, Imara, is focused on sickle cell disease, and in sickle cell disease we identified a phosphodiesterase 9 inhibitor that had particular properties that we were looking for. We were interested in finding a very potent, very selective, non-brain penetrant phosphodiesterase 9 inhibitor, and we identified that sitting on the shelf of the Lundbeck company in Denmark. And so we started with a molecule called Imara 687 and 10 of its brethren, and took it from biochemistry through cell-based screens, through animal models, and then IND-enabling toxicology. Then ultimately funded Imara with $31 million and took that into phase 1 clinical studies, which we completed in under a year. At that point, we took it into a phase 2 development, and we are now in a multinational phase 2 study in adult patients with sickle cell disease. And we expect that by the end of this year, we'll be able to determine whether Imara 687 is able to alter the underlying pathology in the red cells and the white blood cells that belies the problems that patients with sickle cell disease face day in and day out. So the sickle cell population for many years was an underserved patient population. For decades, essentially, they had old chemotherapeutic drugs essentially as the only therapy available to them. One of these, hydroxyurea, is a very potent, very active molecule in patients with sickle cell disease, but has with it a variety of liabilities. Only recently have pharmaceutical companies really turned their attention to this patient population and begun to develop therapies specifically for these patients. And Imara was formed specifically to try and develop a new therapy that would be transformative for patients living with sickle cell disease. And so for us, it's very important to build trust with this patient population that realizes that they have not been well served by the pharmaceutical industry in the past. We need to build their trust in terms of this is a molecule that really can positively impact their lives and the lives of their children. And so it's required a lot of outreach and engagement with patients, but at the same time, we found that to be tremendously motivating and tremendously gratifying, hearing their stories and hearing what we could potentially do for patients living with sickle cell disease. Let me first speak to Cydan, which is the parent company. So Cydan is exclusively focused on monogenic rare diseases and finding therapies that will be transformative for patients. We don't work in oncology, we don't work in infectious disease. And we were, I believe, the first rare disease accelerator with this as our mission. Imara was formed specifically to address a particular need, and that is the need of patients with sickle cell disease. So this is not one of many programs, this is the focus of the company. And everything we are doing is with the goal of trying to lessen the severity of the pathology and the symptoms of patients with sickle cell disease. So we are unique in terms of both having a small molecule that will be a once-a-day, easy-to-use therapy for patients, so not very complex and hopefully affordable for this patient population, and one that we think will really address the underlying pathology of the disease. So I think this highlights what Cydan was set up to go and do. So we saw a publication from a Brazilian group showing that phosphodiesterase 9 inhibitors had the ability to go and address the pathology in red cells. And this work was built upon by a group at Einstein University showing that it also addressed some of the white cell pathology. Unfortunately, the molecule they were using was not ideal for this particular application. And so we went looking for a better molecule, and through our contacts we were able to identify one at the Lundbeck company. And so we were able to essentially take this academic research finding in a molecule that really wasn't going to get traction in these patients, and then translate that into a molecule that we think has tremendous promise in this patient population, that will be a once-a-day therapy for patients, that will be safe and well tolerated, that will not require the monthly monitoring that is currently the standard of care with hydroxyurea therapy in these patients, that will be able to be taken by patients who are both pregnant and trying to get pregnant, which hydroxyurea right now is contraindicated for. And we think this will be a tremendous advance for these patients.